So I'd like to take the opportunity to discuss some of the work that I've been doing relating to general configuration management and mechanisms to be able to easily and more simply spin up environments on your local system. So there's various tools that you can use in order to achieve this, and they all work in unison. There's various mechanisms that you can utilize together in order to create an appropriate workflow that's overall beneficial. So there's two things that I'd like to start by showing here. So the first one is going to be Packer. Packer is a tool from HashiCorp which enables you to generate VMs. It allows VM images for varying platforms and configurations. So this here is a Packer instance that enables you to generate CentOS OS images, and I'm just going to show you what the general configuration looks like. So if we look at packer.json, you see here that there's varying definitions, and this is an open source project that I've found online as an initial configuration utilization. So what we can do is we can just go here and we can go to open in terminal, and then that should give us a terminal there that we can utilize. So as you can see, what I've done here is I've pretty much imported projects so that I can utilize it for varying other things. And as you can see, we'll configure the file as well as we work through it, just to make sure that things make more sense. So we have here what are called builders, and the builders allow you to define what the properties of the machine being configured are. So here we have various builders, and we're only interested in building for Vagrant at the moment. So we go to the list there, we look at the types and the varying configuration that exists regarding each one. Even though there's a KVM to Vagrant, we're not going to be using that. So we're looking at the name here, KVM, we're not going to be using that at the moment. VMware ISO, no. VMware ISO, no. What's the name? VMware. What's the name here? VMware for Vagrant, no, not at the moment. VBox, which is one that we're probably going to need. So what we're going to do, we're just going to make this hash here. And then this one here is just called the VBox. I think we'll keep this one, this builder, though I think that the one that's of most interest to us will be this one here. And then the post processes. Okay, cool. Let's see here. It's that list. This is that hash, and then this is the list concerning to the builders. Am I correct? Cool. So yeah, so you can remove this here, and then here we have the post processes, which allow us to basically do post configuration. And basically here what we're gonna do, keep VBox for Vagrant, and basically puts information in regards to what the output would be called, or a general definition that you can utilize for the output. You can take variables from here to ensure that that's configured as intended. Provisioners, this is just basically how we provision the box. We run varying scripts, so we're just gonna remove VMware for Vagrant, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna remove that script there. We're gonna keep Vagrant up SSH. We're going to remove VBox of Vagrant. We'll keep that one here, and we'll keep this here for everything. So basically, this will run it for this particular builder only. Cool. Alright, and that's pretty much it, really. And that's that. And then here are some variables that you can configure, and a bunch of other things that you can do in relation to how you manage this particular configuration. As you can see, there's a number of things going on. We might go over some of these options in a later date when we do when you add it to a CI system or something of that nature, if we intend to do that in the future. So that's basically that's the Packer configuration. And then here we have other variables that are very static in one sense or another, but these are just basically the hash of the ISO, the name of the installer that we use, etc., and also some of the configurations that can be utilized by the HTTP protocol that pulls in this information and performs varying configurations there. And then the scripts are just basically here. You know, we have the vagrant up. We'll remove this one here. Safe delete. Search comment string. That's fine. All right. So basically, this is what we have now. This is just basically a script that gets run. Yeah, it's just basically a script that gets run at startup with provision time. And then this just installs the VirtualBox guest edition tools, and this does general cleanup when the task is done. So yes, that's pretty much that. So we're just gonna move that there, just so we can get this configuration running as generally intended to build our initial box. This file here was there, we don't actually need it, so I think I'm just going to remove that from there, even though it might be useful for other things. And while the CentOS 6 configuration is there as well, we don't actually need it, but I'm just going to keep it there for brevity. Packer cache is nothing to in essence worry about. And then what we can then do from this point onwards, so in order to start building, it'll be a simple task. So we go to the command line, we run Packer here, which you can get from the HashiCorp website. Then we say Packer help. Well, this is the Packer help command, but what we want to do, Packer build. And what we want to specify here, we want to specify our, we want to say first and foremost that we want to only build for a particular system. So we're gonna say only VBox for Vagrant. And let's remove that. Nice. Make sure there's no errors there. Okay, only VBox for Vagrant. And then we want to make sure that we set our var file. Want to make sure that we set our var file to CentOS 7. So this is a variables file, as you can see here. And then what we want to do, we just want to specify our actual build template is defined here, which will be Packer CentOS, which is this here. It's meant to be as generic as possible to make it work with different OSs and builders. So here we go, and then we run that. Oh, and then we see there's an error, line 72. What happened at line 72? I think I just forgot one of the. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so some of these comments here need to be, since we made a modification to the JSON structure. Alright, and then we do regular build. So then now it starts the building process. So what it's going to do, it's actually going to go get the ISO, which we have cached. Yeah, cool. So we have that cached. So then now that that's there, it's going to provision a HTTP server and then use this configuration here that's in here to supply provisioning data to CentOS. And then once that's done, it's going to boot the system, and then it's going to start the provisioning process, and it's using VirtualBox in the background to achieve these general tasks in this particular configuration of things. And that's pretty much that. So we're gonna wait for that to build before we move on to the next section in regards to actually looking at how to utilize what would have been built in this particular scenario. And as I said before, you can use the scripts in here to make it dynamic and to configure the box or the VM VirtualBox images you'd like, in essence. And that's pretty much that for this instance of things. So just wait for it to do its thing. Probably take like a minute or two, or I'm not too sure there. So just pretty much wait at the moment for it to finish doing its general operation and initial provisioning, which can take a while to begin with. So one thing that I think is actually pretty interesting and pretty useful to know is that, as you can see, that Packer is doing its provisioning here, waiting for SSH to become available. If you open up your Vagrant system, or if you open up VirtualBox, you actually see here that the VM is visible and is being provisioned. And if you open that, you'll see that it's actually doing the process of actually creating a VM, provisioning all the configuration that has been determined and required, and then after that, which this will be configuration within the HTTP directory, or the specified configuration file, and then after it's done that configuration, it will boot up, and then it will run the Vagrant script and the VBox tools script and the cleanup script. So that's how it pretty much works, and that's the general order in which it does its provisioning. It does the HTTP configuration first, and then it does the startup and close down scripts afterwards, which is pretty cool and interesting in all essence. So just wait for that to finish up. So in relation to Vagrant, you can see here that we've actually managed to finish waiting for the SSH connection as it was before. Then it went to connect it to SSH, and it just started doing a bunch of things, such as uploading VirtualBox version and provisioning VBox tools. So then went for it to download a bunch of things, which can be problematic at times, but I think in essence it generally should be fine, as long as the repositories are trusted and things of that nature. And it does all the things necessary. These are all the things provisioned, or these are all the things defined within this particular script here, the VBox tools provisioning script as mentioned previously. So that's what it does here, and then that basically does the install, stores any necessary GPG keys. Then it goes on to the next section after it's finished provisioning the VirtualBox guest editions. It then moves on to the next shell script, which is the Vagrant shell script, and that basically just installs a bunch of things, including some of the things that we specified. And so it takes a while because it's doing an upgrade as well, and that's the general process, and that's where it's at the moment. And so it's just waiting for that to finish, though that takes a long time for it to actually process in essence, but I think it should be okay overall. Okay, so now that we have the configurations finally complete, the Packer configuration, and it took a long time. The last thing that was run, I believe, was the cleanup script. So you've seen all the scripts that we've run previously, and then the cleanup script run. Now it just does a bunch of things to finalize the box, and as you can see, that took 1 hour and 49 minutes. That could be based on a number of factors, including internet speed. Mine's not really that great. CPU tends to be an issue, and memory and all those other things all tend to factor into the whole scenario of things. I think maybe if we made the box actually bigger than 512, it might have been beneficial, added an extra core, etc. But the main factor would be the internet speed, because it's working on the packages that he has to download and configure in the general process. But this will initially take a while in essence. And then once we can review to see the artifact that was actually generated, which was this value here, which that is taken from the output. So we got builders, we got post processor there, so you can see that's where the general information comes from in relation to the configuration that is utilized to actually output the final artifact. And then what we can then do with that is we can actually go ahead and do a vagrant box list. Cool, so we can see all the boxes that we have at present, and then if we wanted to import this box, we could do vagrant box add. So vagrant box add, and then actually just specify the name there, CentOS Puppet IPA 2, because we already have one present. And then we do CentOS VirtualBox add. Oh, just let that minute. Okay, cool. So there we go. So now if we do vagrant box list, we'll see that that box has actually been now added, and you know, we can utilize it just like any other box. So even if we can take this value here, and then for example we could go to a Puppet dev environment, go vagrant, and then we can actually paste this here. And then once that's been pasted into that particular location, it's pretty straightforward in essence. Pretty straightforward in essence. You know, you can just then run that provisioner, and then that will then utilize that box. However, that saves you a lot of time in regards to actually having to provision those things or install those packages at startup. I think usually doesn't take that long, but you know, depending on what commands you run in your shell provisioner is variable in relation to the time it will take to actually provision. So this really helps in simplifying that particular process in essence. It's really useful and very valuable for a number of different reasons and factors overall. So that's Packer essence and the general development process within these varying environments.